Welcome to Ninerology, Faithful in the Trenches. I'm your host, Alan. We're so excited to have you here with us on our very first live stream broadcast here with Ninerology. And we're here to talk about all things off-season, 49ers, and what is going on. Still no defensive coordinator that's hired, but that's not what we're here to talk about today. Instead, today, we want to talk specifically about what do the 49ers need to do on the offensive side of the ball. We know that there's a lot of needs. You probably have that Super Bowl hangover. What does Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch need to do to get the 49ers back to the Super Bowl and over that hump? So we're going to talk about their biggest needs. What are the biggest needs on the offensive side of the ball? We know that Kyle Shanahan's offense has been adopted across the league, but it seems like the better teams have an answer for those skill position players. And so we want to talk about that. We know that the salary cap has been kicked up to $254 million, which is great for the 49ers going into this season because, let's face it, there's a lot of players here, specifically older players, that are making a lot of money on this 49ers roster, but they haven't produced a Super Bowl yet. We haven't done that yet, and we're going on year 30 since the last Lombardi Trophy. So let's talk about the biggest offseason needs, the biggest needs for the 49ers going into this. And I think number one is shoring up that offensive line. And let's just break down some of the numbers. First off, you have Colton McKivitz, who gave up 9 sacks. Now, he played like a $3 million offensive tackle. You know, it's what you expect from, if you're going to pay $3 million for an offensive tackle, you got $3 million worth of offensive tackle play. Nothing against McKivitz. He did what you'd expect him to do. But if you want to win a Super Bowl, and you have skilled players all the way around, and you're not protecting the quarterback to have enough time to get the ball to those skilled player positions, you're going to lose every time. You're going to see that, and it was exposed in the Super Bowl. We saw that during the first 2 playoff games, and so they need to shore up that offensive line. Outside of the left side of the offensive line, there are a lot of questions here. What is going to go on? What's the big picture here? We know that John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan tend to spend more money on skilled player positions in that defensive line and tend to, just pass by on the offensive line. But let's take a look. You had Spencer Burford and Jose Feliciano that were in a rotation all year. What does that mean? There's not a whole lot of confidence regarding that right guard position, because otherwise you'd have somebody solidified there. Then you have Colton McKivitz on the right-hand side. And then you have Brendel, who gave up almost 30 pressures throughout the year. So the question is, what are you going to do, John Lynch? What are you going to do, Kyle Shanahan? Now, when you look at the free agent market, it's not very sexy. There's a couple big names, but they're older. They're out of their prime. You look at Tyron Smith, out of his prime, 34 years old. And so can you upgrade there? Sure, but it's not really going to be a long-term solution. It's not going to be a long-term solution. You have some interior linemen as well, guards that you can go ahead and fill in, but again, not a good long-term solution. So what do you need to do here? You really need to hit hard on the draft. This is the first time in 3 years the 49ers have a first-round pick. You need to hit on that. And my dream pick is going to be Tyler Heighton out of Oklahoma. He's 6'7", 327 pounds, but his get-up off of the ball, that's what Kyle Shanahan needs. Why do you think he fell in love with Trent Williams? Not only is he just this big mammoth of a man, but also he can get off the line. He runs as fast as a tight end for playing left tackle. So you need somebody on the right side that can move as good as Trent Williams can. And Tyler Heighton out of Oklahoma, not a whole lot of experience, just under 2 years starting at right tackle. Or left tackle, but you would draft him to start at right tackle and eventually replace Trent Williams on that left side. But you draft a guy like him who is quick with his feet, but also a big body. You're talking about much better success this next year, better success for Brock Purdy because he's going to have more time, doesn't need to just rely on his legs. Now, that's an asset. It'll be there for him if he ever needs to fall back on it. But you need to bring about something. And can you imagine, what would this mean for Christian McCaffrey? He wouldn't just need to run to the left side. He can go ahead and run either way. Defenses wouldn't know where to stop or where to send that extra run blitz. You got to bring that in. Tyler Heighton's a guy. You got J.C. Latham out of Bama, but honestly, probably too high. Otherwise, you might need to get some draft capital to go ahead and move up. But let's be honest here. The Niners probably aren't going to move up there. They've missed a lot on past first-round picks. But how about this? Instead of picking another defensive lineman, John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan. This is a straight call out to you. Draft an offensive lineman. I don't care if you pick one up in free agency. You need to draft an offensive lineman, develop them while you got Trent Williams there. They can learn the tricks of the trade. They can learn how to work out in the offseason. They can learn the meal plan. What does Trent do on a week in, week out basis to make sure you have a great career? Draft an offensive lineman. That not only sets up your skill player positions for success, it sets up Brock Purdy, who you consider to be your franchise quarterback. It sets him up for success as well. So that's what you need to do. That's the game plan for the offense during the offseason, is you have to shore up that offensive line. If they don't do that during the draft, somebody needs to call out Kyle Shanahan. You might have a great offense, but that offense, when you get into the playoffs, you can no longer scheme your way into a Super Bowl victory. Because why? Because it is best on best. And if you don't have your best on the right side of the offensive line against a Chris Jones, you're not going to win this game. You're not going to win the game that matters most. Because at the end of the season, there's only one team that is happy, and there is one team that goes home sad. So Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch, it is time to prioritize the offensive line. It's been too long. It's been 7 years in your tenure, and we have not prioritized the offensive line outside of the Trent Williams trade. So the question is, are you going to do that this year? It is a deep class for the offensive linemen. Draft somebody. Draft multiple guys. Get a couple tackles, a couple of guards. Draft, develop, and watch what happens. When you do that, not only do you extend the life of your quarterback and your running back, Christian McCaffrey, but also you get a lot more out of your skill player positions. The second thing we got to do is we got to re-sign Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk, if you look at his numbers, just trajectory just keeps going up and up and up and up. And he broke 1,300 yards this year, and that's without a solid offensive line for Brock Purdy. Which means, can you imagine if Brock Purdy had more time to throw, more time for those routes to develop downfield? You're talking about another breakout year from Brandon Ayuk. So you need to lock him up this year. That's the next key. And the last key is maybe it's time to bring back a familiar face. We know how John Lynch feels about guys with torn ACLs. It's almost like they move up to the top of his free agent draft list, or his free agent list of people he wants to poach. Well, guess what? You got Kendrick Bourne, who took off to New England after he had a couple successful years in San Francisco. And he's now a free agent, and he's coming off an ACL injury. Now, he just got off of a 3-year, $15 million deal, so he's due, but guess what? He's got that ACL injury hanging over his head. So I think the 49ers need to find somebody outside to bring in. If you want to draft somebody, go ahead and draft somebody as well. Prioritize that offensive line. But if you bring back somebody that knows the system, and let's face it, Debo's not a great route runner. You know, he's great for that underneath stuff. He's great for those screens. You got Ayuk on one side, but what are you going to do other than that? Juwan Jennings is no lock to return. We got to try to get that figured out. You could tender him, but we need to figure that out. But what if injuries happen? The 49ers had their best chance at a Super Bowl this year with Hufanga as the biggest injury. Next year is not promised. You're not promised a healthy year, especially with the 49ers being the fourth oldest team in the NFL. So we need to start shoring up also those skill positions as well. If you bring back Kendrick Bourne, not only does that help in the locker room and that culture, but also somebody who knows the system, somebody that you can plug in. Look, Debo was out for 3 games this year. 3 games this year and was hurt multiple times just by his style of play. You bring in somebody else that can route run, that can go ahead and go up for contested catches similar to Juwan Jennings. Then you can get Juwan Jennings on the outside, get Kendrick Bourne on the slot on those games where Debo maybe isn't playing, or you bring in those 4 wide receiver packages. That's what you need to do. Bring back Kendrick Bourne. You're probably going to get him at a discounted rate due to that ACL. And he mentions time and time again the culture of that 49ers locker room. I can tell you, if you offer him a contract, he's probably going to take it. So that's what you got to do. And so bring back Kendrick Bourne and just see what happens there. Shore up that offensive line. You have to re-sign Brandon Ayuk. You have to re-sign him. Otherwise, if you just have Debo on the outside and no deep threat, nobody that can really stretch the defense out wide, you're going to start seeing loaded boxes every time. And loaded boxes doesn't help Christian McCaffrey, doesn't help Debo Samuel. But if you re-sign Brandon Ayuk, he's only going to get better. You shore up that offensive line. Brock Purdy and Ayuk are only going to get better. You shore up that offensive line. Those end arounds, those zone reads, those screens to Debo are only going to get better. So you need to draft and draft well. Get several offensive linemen. J.C. Latham, Tyler Heighton. Great guys, but also there is depth here in this draft. There is depth. Take that. You need to pick up a couple free agents. Again, there's not a lot of hot, sexy names in the free agent market for offensive linemen. But you need to go ahead and do something about that offensive line. You cannot continue to rely on Colton McKivitz. And nothing against him, but he played like the $3 million offensive lineman that he is. Again, nothing against him. You got what you expected out of him. The question is, what are you going to do to get better? What are you going to do to stop the Chris Joneses of the NFL, of the AFC, when you play them again next year? So you got to shore that up. You stop with this rotation of Spencer Burford and Jose Feliciano. Shore up that right guard. Make a decision. Have somebody go there. You want Brock Purdy to take that next step. Now he's had a full season under his belt. He's not going to spend the off season rehabbing that UCL. Now he's just going to be working on his craft. Get him an offensive line. Get him an offensive line that helps Brock Purdy, helps Christian McCaffrey, helps your wide receivers. And Kyle Shanahan, let's be real, it helps you with your game planning and as you work on your craft this year, because look, more and more teams are figuring out the Kyle Shanahan system because they want to implement it, so they know its weaknesses. And the only way to combat that is get a better offensive line. Start working on your craft and go to version 2.0 of your game, Kyle Shanahan. I know you have it in you, but you got to shore up that offensive line. And again, lastly, bring back a familiar name, Kendrick Bourne. Lynch, you love those ACL guys. He's recovering from that. He's still only 28 years old. I'm sure you can get him at a very discounted price. Bring back Kendrick Bourne. Bring back that locker room. You know what? And let's ride this out one more time. You got a lot of guys whose contracts are coming up. Guys on the other side of 30. Again, the fourth oldest team in the NFL. Health is not guaranteed next year. This year, outside of Hufanga, it was probably the best year health-wise. Next year's not promised, so you need to shore up that offensive line, bring in a couple other skill guys, re-sign Ayuk, re-sign Jawan Jennings. I know he's probably going to get a second-round tender. And then let's run this thing back. So that's all we have for today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Check us out. We're going to be going over every position group, both on offense, on defense. How can the 49ers get better? Are there surprise cuts? We're probably going to talk about the next defensive coordinator whenever that gets announced. But don't forget, like and subscribe. Join us. Comment below. Thanks, guys, for commenting. Yep, they got to shore up that offensive line 100%. CMC's going to go over 2,000 yards. Purdy's going to get the MVP. We saw what they both did with a shaky offensive line. You shore those up? You just watch. Stuff's going to happen. So thanks for subscribing, commenting down below. Don't forget, share this post, and we'll catch